Captain Rex picked up the DC-15X sniper rifle from the armory wall before him. It felt heavy and weighted in his hands. Just as it should, he thought. The weight of the rifle should equal the weight of pulling the trigger. It could play on your conscience, but luckily for Rex, they just had to shoot clankers. Nice, metal, brainless clankers. He walked over to a cart filled with ammunition and picked up a clip that was fully loaded. He snapped it into place in the bottom of the rifle. It always had a satisfying click when fully loaded. He checked the side to ensure the safety was on. Then, he picked up his helmet from the ammo table and fit it snugly on his head, and threw the canvas strap of the rifle over his shoulder. It was showtime. Rex walked out of the armory and over to the LAAT gunships that were sitting in the Republic attack cruiser's bay. Normally Ahsoka, Anakin, and Admiral Yularen would be all bickering over the last-minute attack plans there. But instead, they were off on another crazy assignment with Obi-Wan. The Jedi had left Captain Rex in charge of the 501st Fleet, and getting some R&R after months of constant fighting and assignments was perfect. But the night before, a holocron message had come in from General Yoda to Captain Rex, so he gathered the 501st leadership to the ship's bay to go over the assignments. He walked over to Sergeant Appo, Fives, and Echo, who were deep in conversation about the new clone trooper armor versus the old armor. Appo seemed content that he missed the feel of the Phase 1 armor, but Fives and Echo were adamantly defending the changes made to the armor. Appo noticed Rex. "Rex, what do you think of the new armor?" he asked. "I'm getting used to it. I have to say it's more breathable," Rex said as he took off his helmet. "Thank you, Rex. Someone is finally talking some sense," Echo hollered. "Right. Let's get down to business, boys. General Yoda has tasked the 501st with an important assignment. Have you all ever heard of General Yakmo?" "Yeah, big scaly Trandoshan fella," Appo guessed. "That's the one," Rex said, tapping a gloved finger to where his nose would be on his helmet. "Well, the Terror of Trandosha, as they call him, is being rewarded with a public war medal by the Trandoshian president. Now, as you know, the Republic isn't in the business of assassinating politicians. But the fine general, on the other hand, is a target of high value." "Ah, so that's what the rifle is for, Rexy boy. We know it takes a lot for you to holster your pistols," Fives teased. All right, we all know I'm not the greatest shot with a sniper. But Yakmo is too valuable to let slip from our grasp. That's why I'm taking a squad with me to set up in various positions facing the award ceremony podium. To fire all at once. If we can't hit him with one shot, we'll certainly hit him with 9. "Sign me up, sir. I love some covert operations," Appo eagerly interjected. "Not with those big feet of yours," Fives ribbed. "They'll hear you coming from a mile away. Must have dangled them into the cloning chambers one too many nights." Appo shot Fives a dirty look. No, I need all 3 of you to be attacking a separatist base on the planet, to draw as many battle droids out of the city as possible. We'll split the 501st into 3 armies. Each of you will take command of 1. Appo, you will attack the front of the base with the largest portion of the 501st. Fives, you take the leftmost flank, and Echo, you take the right flank. You're going to all attack simultaneously. Take it slow and easy. Taking the droid base is not the main objective here. Once the assassination is complete, I will order a full retreat, and we will all meet back at the LAAT gunships. Any questions? Will there be any assistance from Commander Cody and the 212th? I'm afraid not, Echo. The 212th is going to continue their R&R break without us. Now, if there's nothing else, go and prep the men." "Yes, sir," each man called out and came to a stiff salute. Rex saluted back and turned around to walk towards the quarters of Titrus' squad. They were the best the 501st had to offer. 8 elite soldiers, specially trained in covert operations. They were led by Sergeant Trench, a kind man when you talked to him, but when he was in action, he was a ruthless trained killer. Rex hit the console on the side of a large steel door, and it shot open quickly. Inside, 8 soldiers were sitting around a small table surrounded by bunks. They were playing a card game Rex didn't quite recognize, but he saw money was being tossed around. "I'm gonna pretend I didn't see anything," Rex said, getting everyone's attention. The soldier at the head of the table looked up from his hands sternly. He got up slowly, never breaking eye contact from Rex. Suddenly, his mean demeanor was cut off by a large grin that crept onto his face. "Rex, it's been a long time, my friend." "Trench, good to see you. And your men haven't changed one bit." Rex now had a smile as big as Trench's on his face, and he walked over to the table and pulled up a seat. "Deal me into a game of Rancor Head." "Ah, always the traditionalist. Very well, boys, let's appease our commanding officer here." The men all joked around for the next hour and played a few hands. Rex was crushed badly, but he did it on purpose. He couldn't win in front of the men. It might make them resent him for taking their money. But he also knew it was important for morale to keep them in good spirits. When the last hand finished, he explained the assignment to them. Suddenly, the mood in the room had changed, and every man was serious. They were soldiers, and had the ability to switch straight into business. They strategized on the operation. Rex, Trench, and another soldier named Tucker would be in a tower to the right of the podium where the ceremony would be going on below. 3 more soldiers would be facing the podium in a building. These would have to be the best snipers in the squad, as the shot would be a great length. The remaining soldiers would be on the left of the podium in a spire. With all the plans made, Rex and the men got up from the table. Trench and the captain walked together to the LAAT in the hangar bay while the rest of them went to the armory for supplies. Hawk, Rex's most trusted pilot, was waiting for them when they got there. "Hawk, how do you feel about playing it stealthy today?" Trench asked with a grin. "It'd be my pleasure. Stealth is in my genes, you know." They all boarded the gunship and made pre-flight checks. The rest of Tiger's squad filed into the ship with Rex and Trench. Rex pounded his gloved fist against the ship, and Hawk lifted them up and out of the hangar area into space. The fleet was parked a ways away from Trandosia, behind another planet so that the separatist fleet wouldn't notice them. The rest of the 501st gunships have already hopped from moon to moon so as to go undetected as well. Hawk expertly maneuvered in the same way and made it to the orbit of Trandosia. They swung their ship to the outskirts of the city behind a large mountain covered in foliage. The rest of the army had landed their troopers on the other hemisphere of the planet in a large open plain. Rex was trying to lure as many droids as they could as far away from the award ceremony as possible. Him and Tiger's squad disembarked from the LAAT, and Trench told Hawk to stay frosty and ready to leave at a moment's notice. Rex, Trench, and Tucker all began walking off to the right, while the other 2 groups of men headed to the left and straight forward. They would split up early, so that if any group were to run into trouble while going through the jungle, the other 2 would still make it to the objective point. Rex thought about the battle that was being led by Fives, Echo, and Apo that should be getting started by now. The men were likely marching towards the base at the moment, with ATTEs beginning to soften the defenses with cannon fire. Suddenly, he heard the crack of a stick, and he instinctively pulled out his DC-17 blaster from its holster and held it up. Trench and Tucker got onto their knees with their snipers and scanned around them. "See anything, Rex?" Trench's voice said from the left. "No," Rex said as he continued to look. Then he saw it, a small amount of movement. He turned and pulled the trigger. A fiery blue laser shot from the gun and a loud impact was heard, and something crumbled to the ground. The 3 clones walked slowly, with guns raised, to investigate. There was a single battle droid with a blast mark on its forehead. "Nice shot, Rexy boy." "Let's take it slow from here. Could be more of these lurking around," he responded. The men continued on from there, but they never saw another droid in the area. Once they made it to the edge of the jungle, they stopped for a rest. Rex radioed in to the other 2 squads. One had made it out of the jungle without incident, but the other had a soldier wounded by a droid, but they had managed to destroy it before they were able to radio in about the clones. The wounded man had returned to the LAAT, and the other 2 continued with the mission. The 3 groups then headed into the city separately and covertly. Back on the other hemisphere of the planet, Apo and his men marched quietly through the tall grass towards a massive concrete structure ahead of them. The men had been joking around earlier, but the clearer the enemy artillery cannons became, the less talkative the men got. They knew it was only a matter of time before they started firing into them, and there was barely any cover they'd be able to get behind. Apo held his hand straight forward and pointed towards the enemy fortifications. The ATTE tank that had been trailing behind them began launching cannon shots at the enemy walls. They impacted hard, breaking large chunks of rocks. But this was an immense fortress. It had 3 walls. The frontmost was the smallest. The second was a few hundred yards behind and was slightly taller. And the last was the same distance back but had the tallest walls and a keep at the top. Enemy forces on the walls consisted of droidicus snipers, rows of B-1 battle droids on the ramparts, and artillery turrets every few yards. AAT tanks littered the ground as well as dwarf spiders. A large gate stood in the very center of the fortress, and Apo saw as it slowly opened to reveal an army of B-1 battle droids and super battle droids. They all marched forward and spread out along the bottom of the fort. They marched into dugout trench lines and rested their blasters on the edge, aiming at the oncoming 501st clone troopers. Apo radioed in to Fives and Echo, ensuring that they were on the flanks with their men. They assured him that they were in position. Apo took a deep breath and then yelled at the top of his lungs, "Charge!" The men around him began running forward, and the ATTEs increased their rate of fire at the enemy. ATRTs were deployed from the backs of the ATTEs and lunged forward, firing their main weapons at the droid trenches. They leaped ahead of the clone infantry, who was now yelling in a collective war cry. Suddenly, the droids gave the order to fire, and a wall of red lasers bounded towards the oncoming clones. Men were being hit all over and dropping to the ground, dead. But the 501st kept the charge going, firing their weapons as they went. Then came the artillery rounds, impacting the ground and lifting the earth all around them. ATRTs got caught by wrist rockets and exploded on impact, sending their drivers soaring through the air and getting slammed back into the ground. ATTE tanks were firing at the AATs, hitting a few and bursting them into flames. The AATs were responding with fire of their own and crippling the ATTEs. Sergeant Appo ran forward. He saw his men and his peripherals dropping to the ground, and he felt the heat of lasers blast past him. One struck him in the side of the helmet, and he went spiraling to the ground. A trooper bent down to pick him up. "Come on, sir, I've got you," he said, but he was struck in the head by a round and fell down dead. Appo shook it off and kept moving forward. Eventually, the flanks of the droid's outer defenses collapsed, and Echo and Fives' men collapsed inward into the trenches, ravaging the droid lines. Appo and his men soon joined them and ran into the trenches, blasting droids in close combat and hitting them with the butt of their rifles. Dwarf spiders sprayed the oncoming troopers in the trenches, but the clones hit them with rockets and droid poppers. Eventually, they managed to take out the trench line, and the infantry all collected on the outside of the wall, where the droids weren't able to hit them from above. The ATTEs continued their fire from afar against the ramparts of the first wall, trying to knock out the artillery pieces. But they were under heavy fire and losing tanks fast, so Appo commanded them to retreat to a safe distance and preserve their fire for later in the battle. He brushed off his armor and reloaded his DC-15A rifle, and looked up at the top of the wall. "Grapples!" he ordered down the line. Then there was the sound of simultaneously hundreds of wires being shot up to the top of the walls. The men anchored the wires and began the climb upwards. Appo hit his hands together a few times to loosen him up, grabbed the wire, and hauled himself up. This was where things would get interesting, he thought to himself. Captain Rex was in a similar situation, climbing up a massive tower from a back alleyway in the Trandoshan capital city. Tucker, Trench, and himself were climbing up one wire, stopping every so often when a civilian walked below them. They couldn't risk being seen. If they were, then the whole operation would be in peril. As Rex got to the window ledge of the tower, he pulled himself into it and found Trench and Tucker standing over a droid body. Its head was in Tucker's hand, frayed wires hanging from the bottom. "You should have seen it, Rex. Tucker just ripped the thing's head off," he said, shaking his head in amazement. "Wow. Well, let's get in position here, boys. Can't be late for the party." Rex and Trench set up their sniper rifles in the window across from the one they entered into. Rex opened the bipod on the bottom of his gun and made sure it was snugly resting on the hard clay of the open windowsill. He looked through the scope and saw crowds of people heading down the street. They were all congregating towards a stage at the far end of the street. He moved the scope upwards to a spire opposite them. He saw two clones setting up their own gear. He then looked to his far left at a building that sat facing the podium directly. He could make out a clone also peering through a scope back towards him. He raised his hand and flicked his wrist. The clone waved back. Good. Everyone was in position and all set, he thought to himself. They sat and watched as hundreds of Trandoshan citizens gathered around the stage. Guards surrounded the streets, blaster rifles resting at their sides. But the security detail did seem less than normal. Rex smiled. His plan to draw troopers away had worked. Finally, a large Trandoshan man dressed in military fatigues walked onto the stage, followed by a Trandoshan in a ceremonial robe. The man in the robe was presumably the president, and the other Rex recognized as General Yakmo. The sight of him sickened Rex. He was a brutal war criminal who had taken a liking to torturing clones. The scumbag needed to be taken out. The ceremony continued on. Rex told everyone to hold steady. He wanted the guards to get comfortable and not worry before they took the shot. Finally, however, the president placed a medal over the general's head, and everyone's attention was on that. Rex whispered into his comm. "Fire." Multiple shots rang out simultaneously, and the general was struck by 3, piercing his scaly skin and causing him to collapse, dead on the ground. But then, more shots continued to ring out. Rex looked to the tower opposite him. The two clones had brandished their pistols and were fighting back against battle droids and Trandoshan guards as they came up through a staircase. "Our boys are compromised. Trench, fire a cable that way." Trench loaded a new cable into his weapon while Rex trained his sniper and took a shot, hitting a droid. Now fire was coming in from the streets below at the two towers as guards figured out where they were. Rex continued firing at the droids across the street in the towers. One of the clones' pistol had jammed, and a droid trained his E5 rifle at him. Rex took a shot, but the droid fired first, and one of the Tiger squad fell over dead. Trench finally managed to fire his cable over to the building, and Rex continued firing his sniper at the oncoming droids. The last clone in the opposite tower slung his rifle over the cable and ziplined to Rex and Trench. Rex turned to see that they had visitors of their own, but Tucker had been killing them as they climbed up the stairs. Rex turned on his wrist comm. "Hawk, get the LAAT to the tower. We need immediate evac." "Sir, yes, sir," Hawk crackled back. "Alright, boys, we gotta hold out for a few minutes," Rex yelled over the sound of Tucker bursting fire down the stairs. Trench ran to the window they had come from and looked down. Droids were trying to climb upwards. Trench threw a thermal detonator down there. It bounced off one of the droids' head and exploded, severing the rope and crumbling parts of the building down on the droids below. He then started firing his rifle down there, taking out droids with every shot. Rex stayed at the window he had been firing from, shooting at targets in the streets below, trying to hit some of the guards that were spraying the window with blaster fire. Finally, the clone that they had saved joined Tucker in the defense of the staircase, each taking turns firing and reloading at droids who were now trying to climb over the dead bodies of their brothers to get over the stairs. A few minutes passed, with the clones getting shot and wounded. None of them had a fatal hit, but they were wearing down and almost out of ammo. Finally, Hawk crackled on the radio. "Hey, boss man, I'm ready for evac. Should I swoop in?" "No," Rex responded. "Hover above the building." Rex then attached another wire to his weapon and fired at the LAT that had just arrived above them. It clunked into the flat bottom of the metal ship. He motioned for Tucker to hang on below him. Then Trench and the fourth clone did the same with their own wire. "Take off!" Rex yelled into his comm. Hawk pulled up hard, and the four clones were dragged out of the windows violently and were soon dangling in the air as the gunship climbed upwards. Rex held on for dear life. He looked down slightly and saw Tucker dangling below him. But all of a sudden a red laser blast hit him in the back, and he tumbled through the sky screaming and landed on the podium, crushing it with his dead weight. More laser fire came through the sky at them, but they only hit the LAT, whose armor was strong enough to withstand the fire. Finally, they were clear of the city and heading back to the original rendezvous on the outskirts. Once there, they dropped from the wires. Rex's hands were dead tired from holding on. The other three clones of Titra's squad were standing there waiting for their arrival. They all silently got onto the LAT and flew upwards towards the attack cruiser. Back near the droid military base, the clones had broken through the first wall and were fighting the defenses on the second wall. Losses were mounting, ammo was running low, and troops were tiring. Appo had just fired his rifle upwards and hit a droid overhead that fell, barreling to the ground below. Then Appo's comm crackled to life, and he heard Rex. "Appo, Fives, Echo, all of you retreat your forces. Get back to the LAATs and meet us at the attack cruiser." Appo sighed with relief. "Retreat! Everyone, full retreat to the ships!" Half of the 501st began running back to the ships, while the other half provided cover fire, and then they fled too. Men were dropped as they ran back, defenseless. But then the ATTEs barraged the fort with fire, providing cover. After a mile run under intense fire the whole way, Appo and his troopers made it to the LAAT's position, which took off promptly once everyone was on board, including the ATTE crews, who bailed to jump aboard. Hundreds of gunships hurtled towards the orbit, where the Republic destroyers appeared and engaged with the enemy fleet. The ships managed to get back into their hangars, and the fleet took off through hyperspace. Captain Rex, Appo, Echo, Fives, and Trench all embraced, happy to see each other alive. Rex felt accomplished. He had run a solo mission successfully and returned back with the majority of his troopers. The 501st would live to fight another day. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Be sure to click that subscribe button for more content, and hit the notification bell if you'd like to be alerted to whenever I live stream or upload. Thanks so much.